Hello everyone, good morning and welcome back to Sports Today. We bring you this video segment every single morning to help you catch up with things that have been taking place in the world of sport whilst you were catching up on some all-important rest. Because let's face it, whilst you and I need sleep and really the whole world needs sleep, the world of sport doesn't really sleep. There's always something or the other going on and it can be a little tiresome to keep a track of every little thing that's happening. But worry not, that's what we're here for, and we're going to catch you up on some interesting things you may have missed out on that was happening in the world of sport whilst you were getting some rest. And let's of course rewind back to last night's mega IPL final. A lot of people have said it was one-sided and they were correct. But it was also a very dominant win by the Kolkata Knight Riders to seal what was their third IPL triumph, becoming incidentally only the third team to have won at least 3 titles or more. Well, but in the midst of all of that, there was rather interestingly still time for one Ambati Rayudu to reignite what has clearly been a little bit of a sore spot with him when it comes to his entire, let's say, feud with Virat Kohli and the Royal Challengers Bangalore as a whole. You have to be somewhat next level to actually be talking about this when, let's say, a mega final like that has happened, but that is just how things are when it comes to Ambati Rayudu, Virat Kohli and the Royal Challengers Bangalore. Why exactly did I say that? Well, because Rayudu, when speaking after KKR's win, landed a not so subtle dig at Virat Kohli. Why? Because he said that I want to send big congrats to the KKR players, especially their bowlers. They all contributed as well as the whole team. See, you don't need someone to be winning the orange cap. What you do need is players who are contributing about 300 runs or more, and you need multiple of them in the same team. Now, many of you would say that he was just trying to make a point, and in which case you'd be right. But then why exactly did he want to use just the orange cap at that point? We could have said the purple cap. I mean, KKR didn't necessarily have the purple cap winner either. That was Harshal Patel. So why exactly only the orange cap? Well, because the orange cap was won by Virat Kohli this year. So it is very interesting that he's continuing on this cycle of making digs at Kohli, at RCB, whether or not it's something that, let's say, ends up doing anything aside from getting him some unnecessary attention on social media, something that I don't really know what point it does. But it's pretty clear that Rayudu still holds on to a little bit of a grudge, perhaps from his treatment prior to the 2019 ICC ODI World Cup. And sticking with Indian team related prospects, there has been a lot of talk about Gautam Gambhir, who was the mentor of the KKR side this year, whilst they ended up winning the IPL, of him becoming the next India head coach. Now, reports have constantly gone strong saying that he seems to be the preferred candidate for the BCCI, and a lot of those talks were given, a lot of that fuel, let's say, for those talks. Plenty of fire was added to it when these visuals that you see here ended up surfacing last night. You saw Shah, the BCCI secretary, have a very interesting conversation with Gautam Gambhir. Now, obviously, we don't know what was said during that point in time because the audios were turned down. But it is very, very interesting that this sort of a conversation should be happening right now. I mean, it could very well be a congratulatory thing. But do you think maybe the BCCI secretary was trying to convince Gautam to trade his purple for Team India Blue? I guess that's something we'll know should he actually end up applying for the coaching role, which, don't forget, today is the last day to do so because it's May 27th, which was the deadline. Although, of course, with the BCCI, if they think Gautam is their favorite candidate, they may very well extend their own deadline and make exceptions for him anyway. But stay tuned. That is a story that will definitely be developing over time. And speaking of KKR, one of the main architects of their victory was this man right here, Mitchell Starc, the man who is the costliest buy in the history of the IPL auctions at 24.75 crores, more than justified his price tag by taking 5 wickets during the playoffs and ensuring that KKR were on their way to victory in both matches that they played against the Sunrisers Hyderabad. And after the game, he did actually have a little bit of a dig towards some of his critics. And he said that, I've heard there's plenty of jokes that's been made and a lot of those are money-related jokes. I guess being as experienced as me, it was easy to deal with it and bounce back from what was not an ideal start to the season. And of course, he's right, because during the first half of the season, the group stages in particular, Starc looked like a shadow of his former self. But once the playoffs came, man, he discovered the beast within, and the beast within was purring on both occasions during the playoffs, whether it be in qualifier 1 against SRH or the final against SRH. His early breakthroughs ensured that KKR were comfortably on the winning side on both occasions. Sticking with cricket news, when switching our focus to internationals, the West Indies cricket team and completed a clean sweep in the 3-game T20I series that they were hosting against what is quite clearly not a full strength South Africa side. But the fact that the West Indies managed a clean sweep with also, by the way, playing a second string team, because a lot of their players were not part of this series. There's no Rovman Pal, there was no Andre Russell, there was, a Jason Holder got ruled out in between. So there's plenty of, let's say, players that they too were missing. They were able to seal the series quite comfortably. Even in the third match, they were chasing about 160 odd and got there with about 3 overs to spare. So it was definitely a very dominant victory from the men in maroon. And again, they're looking in imperious form, and they're also going to be the hosts for this year's T20 World Cup, or the co-hosts, considering they're hosting it alongside the US of A. But if you're going to be betting on one team to be the underdog or favorites really when it comes down to it, it's got to be the West Indies, because they really have been in very good form, and that side is full of power hitters. Switching our focus now from the world of cricket to the world of football, and Barcelona won their final game under the management of Xavi Hernandez. Remember, Xavi was in fact sacked and told that this game would be the last, and that this particular U-turn came after another U-turn where Xavi had announced that he would be leaving the club, only to be convinced by the management to stay on. They ended up going and sacking him anyway, which is a bit of a weird situation, but that's just the way things roll at FC Barcelona at this point. They beat Sevilla 2-1 to ensure that at the very least they gave Xavi a winning end to his run, and it's been a mixed run. Yes, on one hand he did lead them to a La Liga, but this year standards severely dropped down from where they were expected to be, and the team did not unfortunately kick on. As of now, we don't know who his replacement would be, but all media speculation points towards it being Hansi Flick, the former Bayern Munich and Germany manager. How he fares, that's something that remains to be seen. A little bit more football news, and Leonardo Bonucci, someone who did in fact play a key part in Italy's last international triumph that came in the Euros 2020, has announced his retirement from football. Now, this is a pretty big moment really for Italy, because again, it comes off the back of them being unable to qualify for the 2022 World Cup. Bonucci, we knew, was kind of getting up there in age, but it means that yet another legendary person whose career had been spanning a very, very, let's say, glorious career at Juventus comes to an end. Comes to an end in a bit unfortunate circumstances as well, because he joined Union Berlin this summer, but that transfer didn't work out at all. He ended up joining Fenerbahce in Turkey on a loan deal, but has now called it quits at 37 years old. It'll be interesting to see how it is that he moves on from here. Now, yesterday, in the midst of the IPL final, there was other sporting events going on that unfortunately we couldn't quite give the full coverage that it perhaps should be given. But the French Open is the thing I'm referring to. It kicked off yesterday, and we've got some interesting results from the first day, although none which were very unpredictable. Carlos Alcaraz, someone who many expect to be one of the favorites in this year's French Open, completed a relatively easy straight sets win in his first round. But look at his right elbow and forearm. You can see there's a fair bit of strapping there, and he was dealing with a little bit of an injury concern during this match. One would hope that it's just something that came up during the game that can be treated, because otherwise he will potentially be missing out on another long run. And Alcaraz, despite the glories that he's faced young in his career, has also had to deal with multiple injury setbacks, and one hopes that it's not something that will blight his career for too long. Also, Andy Murray was in the first round, and this was potentially going to be Murray's last, French Open, because he's hinted at the fact that his career now is coming to an end, and that he will, in fact, be calling it quits sooner rather than later. He was up against Stanislas Wawrinka, or Stan the Man Wawrinka as he's more popularly known, and Stan the Man ended up knocking out Murray in the first round itself. Rather inglorious end to what has been a very good career from Murray, but ever since he's come back from that hip replacement surgery, his main goal has just been to continue competing, and as he says, lucky enough to even be playing the sport in the first place. Another person who made a comeback recently, but who's faring much better, Naomi Osaka. You'd remember that she took a lot of time off from the tour in the past year or so due to mental health issues, and then she ended up becoming a mother. But she's made a pretty strong start, unseeded, but ended up getting a pretty easy win in her first round. And again, she's someone who's also a multi-time Grand Slam winner. One hopes that she can start finding her mojo sooner rather than later, because really the women's side of the tour is a bit lacking in star power at times. Sure, you've got a Sabalenka there, you've got a Swiatek there, but Osaka is someone who does have a much broader appeal than those two, and for the sake of the sport, you'd hope that she starts finding her feet, and not just because of that, but because she's also shown that when she is operating at a consistently high level, few, if any, can end up matching her. Last bit of news, and this one was an interesting one from yesterday. The Monaco Grand Prix took place, and it was Monaco's own Charles Leclerc who ended up clinching the iconic Formula 1 race. Now, of course, Charles was one of the favourites to actually win the race when you consider the fact that he started in pole and Monaco's narrow street circuit making overtaking almost impossible at times. But many were concerned because, of course, he has that Ferrari, that Monaco curse that's been going on since 2017, where he's been unable to finish or even win a race at certain points in time. But he overcame the curse, ended up winning the race with a flawless drive for the most part. And what the win really does is ensure that this year's F1 season doesn't quite become boring one note as it has been for 2 years, with Max Verstappen dominating and the rest of the field just, left in his trail. One hopes that there's some more, let's say, domination coming from the other teams, or at least competition, because this was one race where Ferrari looked good, where McLaren looked good, where even the Mercedes showed some levels of improvements considering they brought upgrades to the car in the previous race at Imola. So one hopes that you're going to see these other teams step up and take the fight to Red Bull. But that's it from this edition of the Morning Wrap with Sports Today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. As always, if you enjoy our work, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, follow us on social media as well. We're on Instagram, X and Facebook. Don't forget to download the SportsTech app, and if you're already on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos we did from yesterday, and stay tuned, lots more coming your way. For now, from my side though, it is goodbye.